Hello and welcome to another SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So, in this episode, I will be discussing Disney's 1940 animated classic, Fantasia, which is basically the third such animated release, and for its time, it was somewhat unique, and indeed, to be honest, still is for the most part. In that, instead of having like a soundtrack that's based on the movie, Fantasia serves to explore music through animation, i.e. the music came first. Basically, with Fantasia taking inspiration from a number of iconic classical arrangements. So it's the first Disney anthology-style film to actually be produced. A number did follow in the 1940s, a bit later on, but this was the first, having no kind of overall story or plot, being instead a series of 7 individual animated segments, set only to a number of classical musical pieces from some of the world's most famous composers. And in so, that it was a massive deviation from the story-based movies which had come before, 1937's Snow White and 1940's Pinocchio. And for its time, it was a massive undertaking, an ambitious movie by Walt Disney to kind of produce something of such amazing wonder and spectacle like nothing before. In between each of the animations are live action segments, basically presented by the Master of Ceremony, Deems Taylor, who introduces each of the pieces to us, the audience, as though we were actually sat in a grand concert hall, programme in hand. Basically, in what are the film's only voiced elements, he gives us a very serious and educational twist to the proceedings, offering insight to the filmmaker's kind of frame of mind when creating each of the pieces, and how they kind of visualised each against the tone and the feel of the music, which is brought alive by the amazing Philadelphia Orchestra and its conductor, Leopold Stokowski. Oh, you're going to have to forgive, and I'll say that now. You're going to have to forgive my pronunciations for quite a lot of the names that's going to be in this review. But anywho, so I do apologise for that one, but Leopold, there we go. What I didn't realise before watching the film is that I had never actually watched it all the way through. In fact, I didn't remember kind of watching any of the later segments prior to watching the movie for this review. It would appear that I had only kind of ever made it half the way through before. And if I'm honest, that kind of really does speak volumes with regards to my overall feelings towards this film. Now, I am really sorry to say, and I cannot lie, this film just isn't for me. For what it is just simply too long. And I do struggle with it. I can't deny it has some absolutely beautiful and individually captivating musical numbers, set to some real stunning animation, which was simply light years ahead of anything else which had been produced to date when this film was actually released, giving us some really truly excellent visual representations of some really iconic classical pieces. But for me, it's just not that kind of film that you kind of watch from beginning to end. Nor do you really have to. Each segment you can happily tune in and out of with kind of no overall plot. You don't really end up missing anything. Most of the film, it does kind of feel kind of laborious to kind of watch. And only a couple of the segments are actually truly entertaining. Most of the movie, isn't going to hold a young one's attention, for instance. Not at all. It is, However, a great film to relax to, absolutely. To have on in the background, so to speak. It is a very calming and soothing addition to the Disney classics kind of range in that respect. I do actually sound... I do sound really uncultured, don't I? But anyway, you know, the film kind of does boast a great mix of music and animation. Absolutely. I can't deny that. From very playful, joyful pieces to sad, depressing, and even loud, bold, and even at times very sinister and very dark pieces. Oddly, I did find that each of the pieces had its darker moments. Although they did kind of try and balance this with a lighter mood somewhere in each of them. Even in the last segment, which was very dark, and even to the point of being quite scary. Certainly eerie, to say the least. So, the first segment is Toccata in Fugue in D minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. And this introduces us to the orchestra and its instruments in a really kind of intimate way. It's very dramatic at times, but does kind of get lighter as it progresses, and it's quite a bold and colourful entry, all told. It does serve as a decent introduction to the concert overall, and you can certainly imagine actually being sat in front of this orchestra in a grand concert hall, eagerly awaiting to see what's next on their programme. The second segment is inspired by the Nutcracker Suite by Tchaikovsky. We'll go with that. Tchaikovsky. With selections of his music presented on screen depicting the ever-changing seasons. With no Nutcracker in sight. As stated in the movie, there's nothing left of him but his name. I mean, I could edit these videos and edit out some of these pronunciations, but I could never get them. It's just an impairment, but I get there in the end. So, you know, this is quite a magical and mysterious piece, kind of set against some very kind of well-recognised music. Setting up a very playful tone that does, unfortunately, for me, kind of get quite dreary in the middle. Absolutely. The third, and arguably the best recognised and most iconic piece in the movie, is the Saucers Apprentice by Paul Dukas, featuring none other than Mickey Mouse, who makes a very welcome appearance. Absolutely. This is, if you didn't tell, my favourite and most admired section of the movie, and it is a great take on the pitfalls of taking shortcuts, as Mickey has delusions of grandeur, thinking he can use magic to carry out his chores, when things kind of get quickly out of his control. This, I would say, is an excellent piece, and I'm sure it is the most beloved, truly. With its kind of sense of wonder and its playfully sinister feel. The fourth piece, and the last in the first half, yes, this film actually has an intermission, just like you would at a real concert. Time to get up and get yourself an ice cream. Of course, I'm kind of sure that this actually gave the cinemas a chance to swap the reels over, with it being such a long film back in the day. Not sure what the max time would have been on a reel, but I would estimate about 40 to 60 minutes, probably somewhere. But either way, it does solidify more of a grandioso concert feel for the movie than actually kind of being a movie itself. Yep, so the fourth piece is set to The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, which is a visual depiction of the history of our planet, Earth, starting at the bowl of creation and then showing us the ever-evolving animals in an attempt to depict evolution in a piece that is very, very often very dramatic and very serious throughout, being quite dark and even disturbing at times for what it is. It forms a sort of science lesson, if you will, in what is probably the most visually impressive sequence in the movie. It really showcases how far animation had come and what could be achieved. But for me, even as a scientist myself, it's also the most droll piece in the film. And it's kind of the least interesting, really, even though it may be the most technically advanced. The choice of music didn't really help, with it kind of projecting the same kind of somber and dredging feel that the animation's got. The fifth piece is set to the Pastoral Symphony by Beethoven, based on Mount Olympus, home of the Greek gods, and features a number of mythological creatures. It is actually quite a quaint and joyous set piece for the most part, with kind of a real romantic feel and a light and dainty tone, which does, I must admit, fit the music very well. Both kind of magical and very playful. It is one of the more enjoyable segments, absolutely, being very pleasant to watch, and is certainly a perky addition following the previous segment. Although I would say it does contain some nudity. Well, it's kind of mostly nondescript, and it's not very detailed for the most part. But it was certainly something I wasn't expecting from a Disney. I mean, I suppose if it's in the name of art. Anywho, the sixth piece, if you like, is a dainty and an elegant number for the, if you like, the Dance of the Hours by Ponchielli, which many of you, I'm sure, will actually recognise when it kind of gets going. This time it's kind of a ballet with a number of different animals being used to depict the changing times of the day. It is fairly light and a breezy piece, but fairly forgettable, if I'm honest. And there's kind of not much more to it than that. The seventh and the final segment is actually comprised of two different musical pieces. The first, and very much one of my favourite pieces in the entire film, is Night on Bald Mountain by Modest Mussorgsky, which has been used in numerous horror films to great effect. It presents just an absolutely dark and macabre atmosphere that the animators have captured excellently. Even if the segment does kind of start off quite scary, as we see the devil summon a number of spirits and demons who dance and fly around, giving us a very moody, dark, and a kind of even sinister kind of insight into the dark of night. This then kind of does open into the second musical number, Ave Maria, by Franz Schubert, as kind of night gives way to day, and the devil and his demons, they crawl back from where they came, paving the way for a brand new day of beauty and wonder. So, all told, this movie, certainly cements animation as an art form, and not just kind of something relegated for children and amusement, which, I must admit is something Disney really did strive for back in the early days. It may not be the best or the most enthralling movie, in my opinion, but I do respect Walt Disney's vision in this movie, and in that, over time, it has certainly succeeded. It may not have made a lot when it was first released, but it has become a true classic over time, and an excellent showcase, absolutely, of the dreams and the courage of Walt and his animators back in the day, which is a real testament to their ambition and talent, which is most certainly showcased in this film. The true brilliance and artistry in this movie, it's not lost on me in this film at all. That part is truly amazing, absolutely. But in terms of being a film in its own accord, it's simply just not that compelling enough to be something that I would go back to time and time again. Each segment is just simply far too long, and you do end up losing interest. Well, I did, in any event. It's just simply not for me. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button. Please, do return to SciFirst MovieTalk for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. We've loved having you. We'd love to see you back. Please do. But yes, most of all, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.